Welcome, welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us for the Opportunity Project for Cities' third ever Demo Day. I'm Rebecca Rodo, the Program Manager from the Center for Public Impact, and I'll be your MC for today. Today you get to hear from 4 incredible teams in Akron, Ohio, Detroit, Michigan, Macon-Bibb, Georgia, and Miami-Dade, Florida, who've all been hard at work over the last 22 weeks to develop open data digital tools that address pressing challenges facing their residents. We're really thrilled to share these teams' journeys and products with all of you, and we'd love to hear what you're thinking throughout the day. In that spirit, please take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat, tell us where you're from, and let us know what is one app you couldn't live without. For me, that's my crossword puzzle app. It's a very essential and very nerdy part of my daily routine. It's one of those things that just really helps calm me and get the day going. I'm going to let folks continue to use that chat, and feel free to jump in that chat in the Q&A function and use the reaction function throughout the presentations today. Cool. Love that. Oh, I see Spotify. Yeah, that's important. Weather app, very important and very relevant for today. Awesome. Okay. Well, while folks keep dropping those in the chat, I'm just going to run down what our day is going to look like today. First, I'll share a little bit about this program that we all are here for, the Opportunity Project for Cities, its impact, and its many wonderful partners that make it possible. Next, we'll hear from our keynote speaker, Oliver Weiss, who's the Chief Data Officer at the U.S. Department of Commerce. And he'll share a little bit on how governments can leverage data to drive social change. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty, which is our demos. So you'll hear from each member of this year's cohort about their experience in the program and get a sneak peek of some of the products they've developed. Finally, we'll close out with remarks from our partners at the Knight Foundation and give you a little preview of what's coming up next. So to start us off, a little bit about how this program works. The Opportunity Project for Cities brings together a team made of local government changemakers, community leaders, and technologists to prototype digital tools using open data to address local challenges. We partner them over the course of a 22-week design sprint, where teams produce valuable products and develop skills to better listen to and co-create with their residents. The sprint's divided into 3 phases. So in phase 1, teams conduct community research to better understand the problem they're tackling. In phase 2, teams develop an open data tech solution based on that research and test it with their residents. And in phase 3, teams finalize their solution and plan for long-term sustainability and impact. In the short term, the program increases community voice in government decision-making and produces valuable tools that address community problems. The program coaches governments to better listen to and co-create with residents, develop core digital innovation skills, and partner across sector. Each year, we aim to go deep with these communities to make these skills and practices a fundamental part of how governments think and serve the public, so that in the long term, governments can build a culture of accessibility that strengthens trust with residents and lays a foundation for lasting community-driven innovation. TOPC is a true team effort, and I want to thank the many partners that make this program possible. First, the program is made possible by the generous support of the Knight Foundation. Next, Google.org is the program's tech partner. They staff pro bono Google technologists, including product managers, software engineers, UX researchers, UX designers, and more on each team to help them develop their products. Finally, the day-to-day program administration is a joint effort between my organization, the Center for Public Impact, and the Beeck Center for Social Impact and Innovation. A little bit about CPI and our role in the program. So we at CPI, we act as a learning partner for governments, which means we believe that governments need to center learning and relationships to address the conflict challenges we face. In TOPC, CPI provides targeted coaching and facilitation to teams around community engagement and learning. This year's coaches included Matt Collins, Talmud Islam, Brian McGough, Lily Payton, Grayson Wiles, and Brian Zulaga. Our partner organization, the Beeck Center, advises on product development, data governance, civic tech, and more. And I'll pass it over to my counterpart at Beeck, Harold, to share a little more. Over to you.
Hello all. My name is Harold Moore. I'm the project lead and senior product advisor at Georgetown University's Beeck Center. The Beeck Center for Social Impact and Innovation at Georgetown University brings together students, expert practitioners, and extended networks to work on projects that solve societal challenges using data, design, technology, and policy. Our projects test new ways for public and private institutions to leverage data and analytics, digital technologies, and service design to help more people. On this project, we provide expert advising to all of the sprint teams, particularly around research. Shout outs to Elam Ali, our stellar researcher, digital innovation, public interest data, and open data. Next slide, please. The final partner that I'm going to introduce is Google.org. Google.org enables teams of software engineers, product managers, user experience researchers, designers, and more to complete pro bono work with nonprofits and civic entities focused on areas like education, economic opportunity, criminal justice reform, AI for social good, crisis response, including COVID-19 relief. It's my pleasure to introduce Jen Carter. Jen is the global head of technology at Google.org and is here to say a bit more about their engagement with the Opportunity Project for Cities. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you so much, Harold. And hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Jen. As mentioned, I'm the head of technology at Google.org, which is Google's philanthropic arm. And I also lead all of Google's skills-based and pro bono volunteering efforts. I've been at Google for over 15 years now, and my work is really focused on harnessing the power of technology and the expertise of Googlers to help accelerate the impact of nonprofits and civic entities around the world. And while this topic is really relevant at any time, especially now as we face the climate crisis and the housing crisis and so many other challenges of our day, it has never been more clear that we really need the business and nonprofit and government and science and tech communities to work together to solve these global challenges, as they cannot do so alone. So I am excited to be here with all of you today. I know I'm most looking forward to the demos, so I will be quick, but if you want to go to the next slide, please. Amazing, and one more. Awesome. So a little background on Google.org. Our goal is to bring the best of Google to innovative nonprofits and civic entities who are tackling the world's toughest challenges. And we do that in a few ways. First, by providing our grant dollars. So 1% of Google's profits go to support nonprofits around the world. Last year, Google.org gave away around $300 million in cash grants to nonprofits and social enterprises as part of a 5-year, $1 billion commitment that we launched in 2017. We also give back by providing our products and technology. So, for example, installing Wi-Fi during a crisis or giving cloud credits to nonprofits. And then again, since 2017, these past 5 years, we've given away over $7 billion of in-kind product donations, including ad grants and Google Workspace and Maps. And then finally, we give back by providing what we think is our most valuable resources, which is our people. So since 2017, we've done over 400,000 hours of pro bono or skills-based volunteering, which is over 45 years if you include 24 hours a day, or over 200 years if you look at kind of just work time. So we're really passionate about giving both our cash grants as well as our in-kind support, but especially our people, the volunteers that you will hear a little bit about today. Next slide, please. So how do we actually give volunteers? It's looked a little bit different over time, but our origin story is actually the healthcare.gov launch in 2013. As most folks on this call are likely familiar, when healthcare.gov first launched, the site crashed. It couldn't keep up with the QPS alongside some other challenges. And so some folks from Google, as well as other tech companies, voluntarily took time off work to go and fix it. At the federal government level, that of course led to the creation of the US Digital Service. But for Google.org, it helped us realize that we really needed to double down on our pro bono and skills-based volunteering efforts. We were hearing from both nonprofits and civic entities we worked with that they wanted to do more with technology, but it was really difficult for them to find and retain the software engineers and product managers and UXers and others that companies like Google rely on to build great products. And then at the same time, we were actually hearing from Googlers, our employees, that they wanted to do more to give back to the communities where they lived and worked, but it was difficult to find those opportunities for pro bono or skills-based volunteering. It's a lot easier to find what we call hearts and hands volunteering, essentially, painting a school or planting a tree. But it's a lot more challenging to find those opportunities that make use of, the unique skill sets that technologists can provide. And so this healthcare.gov situation kind of only worked itself out because it was a public launch and a public crash, which meant that tech folks saw the challenges that the government was facing, and they knew that they had the skills to help. But for us, we knew that the orgs we were supporting were facing these same types of challenges every single day. They just weren't necessarily as visible to the public. And so we started thinking more strategically about how we could really enable more of these public-private collaborations. And so I think it was in 2015, we were one of the founding partners of a program called Civic Bridge with the city of San Francisco. Our very first project with them was helping build Dahlia, their affordable housing project that ultimately enabled them to move their affordable housing applications online. But then in 2019, we doubled down even further and launched our flagship program, which is the Google.org Fellowship. If you wouldn't mind, next slide, please. So the Google.org Fellowship enables teams of Google employees to work full-time with nonprofits and civic entities for 6 months. We're really proud of the program that we've built. It's the most in-depth corporate volunteering program that we know of. 6 months full-time, a cross-functional team, as many as 15 folks who are working alongside both nonprofits and governments alike. But I think even more important, and this will be relevant for today than these sort of structural differences versus the more traditional volunteering programs, is really what those differences enable, which is the building of products that can truly help move the needle on some of humanity's biggest challenges. So we've run over 40 of these Google.org fellowships since we launched the program, each of them typically building and launching a product from the ground up. But all of that is to say that we just believe really strongly in the value of these types of public-private partnerships. And so I think it was a couple of years ago now, 2021, I believe, that Beeck Center and CPI reached out about top cities, and we just jumped at the opportunity to kind of take what we'd learned and continue to learn from both the Civic Bridge and Google.org fellowship models and really apply it to this work, collaborating further with these organizations with whom we share, similar missions and visions. Next slide, please. So, we all share, I think, a belief that, public-private collaboration is a really powerful vehicle in our cities and for our governments. We take a cue from the disability rights movements, nothing about us without us. You can't really have a good outcome of any sort without that philosophy, without centering the voices and the perspectives of those who are most impacted. And we know that those best answers often come from those who are closest to the problem. But at the same time, equally importantly, I would say, is the idea that you can't, that work can't fall solely on the shoulders of impacted community members. Everyone else needs to do the work to contribute. And so, again, that's part of the reason that we believe really strongly in the value of these collaborations, of these partnerships that, can help harness the power of technology to accelerate the impact of nonprofits and civic entities, where we build with and not for cities and communities, and where we can kind of work on capacity building and bolster engineering and design capabilities within the government teams so that they can continue to take this work forward long after the kind of official program elements end. So I think that's on collaboration. I think also on innovation, we see these types of collaborations as a catalyst to adopt new technologies and human-centered design principles. In fact, we tend to think of philanthropy as society's risk capital. So we can test out new approaches, new technologies, we can see what works, and then we can try to scale the resulting solutions to help even more people. So, for example, I'm excited to hear from the Detroit team. I know they explored the use of Gen AI on their project. And, it's this kind of curiosity and this innovation that we think can fuel greater outcomes for residents. And then finally, we're aligned when it comes to some of the topics and issue areas we tackle that were mentioned a little bit earlier. But next slide, please. So I mentioned, the climate crisis and the housing crisis, also more broadly, the idea of supporting underserved communities and providing opportunity for everyone. We share a deep-rooted commitment to tackling these issues and have been for a long time. On the climate side, for example, Google was, I think, the first major company to become carbon neutral in 2007. And then also the first major company in 2017 to match our energy use with 100% renewable energy. And then on the housing side, I mentioned our work with the city of San Francisco on affordable housing in 2015, but we recently, just this year, launched a Bay Area-wide version of that platform known as Doorway as part of a $1 billion commitment to help accelerate the production of affordable housing in the Bay Area. So those are just a few quick examples, but all of that is to say that we are deeply committed to doing this work for the long term and excited about the impact of these types of collaborations. Just one more slide, please. So yeah, on that note, I think this has just been an incredible collaboration. So I just wanted to end with a huge thank you to everyone that has made Top Cities possible and worked tirelessly to bring us all together for the demos today, but of course also over the course of these past few months in the entire program. So huge thanks to Beeck Center and CPI, to our government teams and community partners, and lastly, to the Googlers that came together for, the research, design, and development sprints to help make each city's vision come to fruition. So I am really excited to see what the teams have built, but I'm even more excited to continue to follow along and see the impact that this work ultimately has in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen, and thank you, Harold. We are just so grateful to partner with both Beck and Google. These projects would not be possible without y'all's support. And on that note, I'd love to welcome Lynn Overman, the Executive Director of the Beeck Center, who is going to introduce our keynote speaker. Over to you, Lynn.
Great, thank you so much. So my name is Lynn Overman. I am the Executive Director of the Beeck Center for Social Impact at Georgetown University. And I want to start by thanking you all for inviting me to participate in this incredible demo day. I am so excited to see the results of all the incredible work the city teams have been driving towards over these past weeks and months. The demos that we will all see today will have real impact in the lives of their communities. And I think one of the things that is most critical and almost unique about this program is that it really demonstrates the value of working closely with community partners to collectively tackle meaningful challenges. And I think that origin story around really that partnership with communities, understanding the community needs and having them co-create is a critical component of what makes these projects successful. But I am not here to talk about how incredible these demos are going to be. I do want to introduce my longtime friend and colleague, Oliver Weiss, who is currently the Chief Data Officer at the U.S. Department of Commerce. I will say Oliver and I have known each other for many years and first met in New Orleans. I won't give us the date because I don't want to make us sound old. When Oliver was the founding director of the City of New Orleans Office of Performance and Accountability, the city's first ever data analytics and performance management team. Oliver actually served in the city in the thick of the city's recovery from Hurricane Katrina, where the need for data to drive decision-making could not have been more clear and more critical. This work was recognized with awards from the American Society of Public Administration, the International City County Managers Association, Bloomberg Philanthropies, and Harvard University. And in fact, in 2015, Oliver was named to the Government Technology's top 25 doers, dreamers, and drivers. And I would definitely encourage you, if you ever come across Oliver at a conference or in person, to ask for stories from those days, because they are many and they are epic. But currently, Oliver is serving as the Chief Data Officer at the Department of Commerce. In this position, Oliver is responsible for leading the Commerce Department's data strategy, advancing capacity for evidence-based decision-making by implementing the Evidence Act and aligning and scaling the department's data resources to better meet the needs of users. And I do want to give a quick shout out to the Department of Commerce. I don't think a lot of folks realize how much data they actually have, but just a couple of top examples as to why Oliver's job is so important and so broad. They oversee NOAA. So for the folks that were calling out the weather app, that is thanks to one of the agencies that Oliver works with. They oversee the Census Department, which facilitates so much underlying data that drives so many of the technologies that we use daily and help inform our decision-making. And I believe they used to call themselves the Department of Data. So Oliver is a CDO at probably one of the most critical data agencies in the federal government. So all of that to be said, I think Oliver's deep experience at both the city level, in the private sector, and now at the federal level makes him almost the perfect person to provide our keynote today. So without further ado, I will hand you over to Oliver.
Thank you so much, Lynn, for that gracious introduction. I'm blushing. So thanks to your team and the whole CPI team for organizing this event. So before I get started with my remarks, I'm going to tell you all a little story, and this might get a little pedantic, so buckle your seatbelts. But once upon a time, there was a village. And in this village had been besieged by a terrible plague. And a wanderer came into the village one day, right? And she didn't really have anything on her except for a backpack that had her clothes and a stone. And she was really hungry, right? And she said, I need some food. And they said, you came in the wrong place. We don't really have anything here. And she said, oh no, I got something. I got this stone in my backpack here, and I'm going to make a delicious stone soup for y'all. So she gets this cauldron, right? And she puts the stone and the fire's up the water, and it's going, and it's going. And she said to someone who was curious about that, said, you know what would go really well in this stone soup is some potatoes. And the villager said, oh yeah, well, that's cool. I actually have some potatoes back in my house. So the villager went and got the potatoes, put the potatoes in the stone soup. And then the woman said, you know what even goes well with those potatoes is a ham bone. So someone got a ham bone, and so on and so forth. And then over time, you had this cauldron that was overfilling with vegetables and carrots and onions and parsley and all that good stuff. And eventually, this village had a big party and enjoyed all this stone soup together. My mother used to tell me this 500-year-old story, and perhaps you've heard it yourself. And some tell this story as a cautionary tale, to beware of the shams and con arts. That stone wasn't magic, the cynics say, right? But I bet all of you, and there's nearly 100 of you, who are turning in right now and who have worked for the better part of 6 months, sharing and contributing your talents, your insights, your expertise, your lived experience in a top sprint to make your cities and counties better. You'll probably see the story a bit differently. Of course, that stone is magic, or at least a little bit magic. And I argue that that same magic that's involved in that century-old folktale is very much at work in what makes the top program so special. And I'll come clean with y'all. I was the chair of a top sprint at the federal level last year with my longtime friend and collaborator, Denise Ross. And for those government folks, you actually come to the table with very little. You come with a question, a problem, maybe some already publicly available data. But then collectively, the tech teams, the community organizations, the user advocates, the various civic organizations who are involved in this effort, collectively come together to make something really powerful and meaningful. So I hope you all today in your demo day can celebrate some of this incredible stone soup that you've made together. And I'm, as Lynn mentioned, I'm CDO for the Department of Commerce. And just so you all know, I'm very proud of a lot of what we do at Commerce and the incredibly talented people here. But among those incredibly talented people and teams, we have the COIL team, which is housed at the Census Bureau, which is the driver of the top program at the federal level. So this program at the federal level is very near and dear to my heart, something that we're very proud of here at the department. And it's really exciting to see this program scale now to other levels of government, especially local city and county governments. That's awesome. And I've been in my gig for about 1.5 years now here at DOC, but I've been in and around government for the better part of 15 years. Most of those years were at the local level at the city of New Orleans, as Lynn mentioned. And I really think that this top program is one of the more audacious, even radical programs that are out there. So it's one that I'm really excited about, and I think it embodies the very best about what public service can and should be. So I want to kick off today with some reflections on why I find this program, this methodology, so remarkable and unique. And when I looked at all the projects that you were doing, I was struck by some of the themes that were common across these 4 different projects. And I know there wasn't any like intentional, deliberate theme to the projects, or at least not as I understand it. But I think it's quite striking that these projects all have at least 2 things in common, or at least that's what resonated in me. One is each project has something to do with community development, right? Whether that's resilience or permitting or community engagement, they do all seem to be about making that place that you all are in a more thriving, just place. So that's really exciting. And two, data is central to each of your projects. And those themes are especially important to me as they have really been the driving themes in my career and have been central to what I've done for the past 15 or 20 years. And as Lynn mentioned, I cut my teeth in post-Katrina New Orleans, applying data to make that city a more thriving, inclusive community as it was coming off the heels of a very major crisis, the Hurricane Katrina. So I joined city government in 2010 when Mayor Landrieu was inaugurated into when he became mayor of the great city of New Orleans. And one of the huge problems that we were dealing with at that time was blighted housing. So the best estimates we had said that about 25% of our housing stock looked like that house there on the right. And if you came back after the storm, the whole city had to evacuate after Katrina, right? So if you were on the left, man, it was hard to look like that house on the left. You had to fight the insurance adjuster, the onerous bureaucracy of the rebuilding programs to get your home back in order. And there was just a lot of frustration with blighted housing that was harboring crime, driving down property values. It was just really awful. And I know a lot of the cities here very much deal with blight as a chronic issue. And I think you know how incredibly challenging that problem is. So what did we do about it, at least from the data perspective? So Mayor Landrieu set a really big goal, 10,000 fewer blighted addresses by the end of his first term, and articulated a strategy to get there that reorganized government, that introduced new carrots for redevelopment and scattered site development so we could build back those blighted housing as opportunities for affordable housing for new residents that were coming in or residents that were returning, and then some new sticks as well to create some accountability and some movement in the vacant housing stock so that they could be returned back to commerce. And on the data side, what we did is we introduced this program called BlightStat, and the data was so rudimentary. I mean, we were scrapping at our own systems to piece together very basic business intelligence on what we were doing in terms of our blight operations. And the power of it really was to create a feedback loop on whether the new programs we were introducing, both on the carrot side and the stick side, were working. And if they weren't, we would pivot and make adjustments in real time. And in addition to the value of BlightStat to being valuable for management, it really became an important constructive avenue for citizen engagement. So hundreds of residents attended our meetings and provided us critical ground truthing on the results of our work. And in New Orleans, where residents have a very well-justified skepticism of the competence and integrity of their government, this level of transparency and operating was a sea change in how the city normally conducted business. And just to shout out, you're a little, history lesson here. Denise Ross was my counterpart at this time and really instrumental in helping stand up this program. Denise Ross then went on to the White House, worked with Lynn Overman to create the top program at the federal level. And now Denise is the Deputy Chief Technology Officer of the United States and was my co-chair on a top sprint last year. All right. So if you ask most people, why is data important? The answer is generally that you need data to make better decisions. That's kind of like the canned answer that you hear pretty much from anyone. And I think that's true, of course, but I think it really significantly undersells the power of data to drive change. And one of the lessons I learned from my experience in local government in New Orleans, and the lesson that was reinforced with me when I co-chaired a top sprint, is that the power of data is not unlike the stone in the Stone Soup folktale. Its magic comes when it is an enabler for collective action and a reference point for learning. And in New Orleans, data was a powerful tool for community building, not just in helping us make better decisions about where to allocate resources, but to catalyze common understanding, promote coordination, and a feedback loop for learning. So let's shift gears to today. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and give you my guess on why each of the groups here, which were spread out across the country, each selected projects that had something to do with community building. I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that the last few years have brought an onslaught of one traumatic crisis after another. And nearly all aspects of how we live, our health, our identities, our climate, our politics have been affected. And I'm sure here everyone has been touched in a very personal way by the impacts of the pandemic era. And let's not lose sight that we've lost over 1 million of our brothers and sisters, our neighbors, our colleagues in government to the awful disease that transforms our lives. And let's take a moment to remember them. And when I look back in the last few years, I know I did, I think all of us faced the question of whether the period we found ourselves in 2020 was either the precipitous beginning of a long decline, or rather a nadir out of which we can emerge more resilient, thriving, and just. And it takes a leap of faith to come together and contribute in the best way you know how to build a better future and to reject a cynical fatalism. And I think it's important to recognize that this year's Top for Cities sprint comes just 3 short years after COVID took hold, and it takes place within this context. So in the last few months, you tackled enormously vexing challenges, from community engagement to promoting resilience to climate change. And I want to thank you very much for taking that leap of faith and contributing your incredibly valuable talents and abilities to our common cause. So finally, I want to close with some thoughts about how I think TOPS is perhaps in a shadow way pushing against some prevailing assumptions about how a government innovation and data program should develop and mature. So I'm talking mostly here now to my brothers and sisters in government. So at CDO, and as CDO of the Department of Commerce, that provocative approach is quite significant. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. So here is a graph that comes from the Federal Data Strategy Action Plan, and it was developed by the CDO Council, the Federal CDO Council, which I'm a member of and on the leadership committee of, and proud to be a part of it. And by the way, we've been collaborating recently with the Beeck Center's CDO network, which has been really exciting. And I think there's a lot of opportunities there. But what you see here is that you start with a foundational process and system so that you can lay the groundwork for value-producing analytics later on. And indeed, this strategy doesn't really see that happening until like later this decade, right? And I think a big part of my job as CDO is to do everything we can to accelerate that adoption curve. We've been at this government data game for a long time, and we have to move beyond the proofs of concept and get to scale to address the huge societal challenges that all of our governments face. And if we don't get the value to 2030, we have definitely missed the boat. So implicit to that trajectory and from that logic model in the federal data strategy is what I'll call the build the castle theory of change. And the notion there is if you want to build a castle of data innovation, you first have to lay the foundation, then the walls, then the roof, et cetera, until you get a beautiful gleaming castle worthy of a king and queen. And what's so intriguing and so brave about TOP is that it asks us for just a few months to suspend disbelief in this build the castle theory of change. Not reject it altogether, but to suspend disbelief. And it asks of us Let's just build the darn castle in the first place with the rocks we have and worry about the foundations later. Let's start with the problem, deliver value, and then buttress supports underneath those castles later on. And I really like this idea. And I think there are kernels of this program that can be applied to our task to accelerate the data innovation curve. Let's focus on users and their problems. Let's work collaboratively by default, and let's build data projects agilely. We can then focus later and over time on building the foundations of data infrastructure, standards, governance, et cetera, beneath them in a targeted strategic way. So I'll wrap up with this quote from Henry David Thoreau. If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. There is where they should be. Now put foundations under them. So welcome to the Top Cities Demo Day. It's time to finally enjoy the stone soup. And thank you all so much for your incredible contributions. I'm thankful, and your communities are thankful as well.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much. I was just sitting here in the background thinking, wow, you know, Top Federal really laid that groundwork for us. And I just love to hear the way these themes and these values and the importance of that collaboration and that magic, as you so rightly call it, continue to shine through in these local governments work. So thank you so much. And thank you again to the Knight Foundation, who continues to make this program possible, and our wonderful Knight communities who participate year over year, and some new ones who we finally get to hear from today. So without further ado, let's start our city presentations. And first off, we have the beautiful Miami-Dade County, Florida, where the team was addressing the commuter experience during extreme and increasing heat events. Today, you'll hear from George Valens, the IT Innovation Manager at the county, who also served as the program's Fearless Manager. We'll also hear from Nicholas Duran, the Advocacy Manager from Transit Alliance, the team's community partner throughout the program. Pragya Gupta, our Product Manager from Google, and Sakura Umebayashi, our UX Designer from Google, who both provided their expertise to create a beautiful and functional product. And a little bit on Miami's community partner Transit Alliance. They're a local nonprofit in Miami, specifically dedicated towards advocating for walkable streets, bikeable neighborhoods, and better public transit in the county. I just want to say Miami was a standout team due to their adaptability. They pivoted frequently based on resident feedback and sought to center the commuter experience throughout each step of the program. So I'm going to hand it over to Miami, but I just want to remind everybody that Q&A function is there for you to use. Chat function, reaction function, all of that. We will have a little time for questions at the end. So over to our wonderful Miami team.
Hi, everyone. Next slide, please. So on behalf of the Miami-Dade County team, really excited to share with you our cool commute app, which is what we lovingly refer to as an extreme heat-focused inclusive planning tool. Next slide, please. So going to give you all a brief overview of our team, why this opportunity project for cities is important and is important to us. We'll do a quick overview of the problem area and the commuter outreach and insights. And then lastly, we'll do a deep dive into the product solution and our next steps for the tool. Next slide, please. But we can't do all that without shouting out this amazing team. So there are certainly too many people here to name individually with our 10-minute constraint, but just want you to know that every person on this list across all these organizations have played a pivotal role in making this this amazing tool possible. Next slide, please. And I think that slide, the team slide, illustrates the first point, right, in our opportunity project for cities and why this is important to us, right? We're building things together. So it's just really important to do that because it builds trust in our community, builds trust with our residents. It lets them know that we're thinking of them, but more importantly, it builds community around government services, which is critical. In doing that, it lets us serve our residents with new and exciting tools and services and strategies to address our community problems. And also, and really most importantly for me, it helps us address problems first, right? We start with the challenges part of this process, and we let that problem inform every step of our solution and our design. And that leads to another great point, which is that we push ourselves. So this lets us reimagine how we do things, lets us build things in a new way, and exposes our teams to new strategies and new ways of building. And with that, I will turn it over to our awesome Chief Heat Officer, Jane Gilbert, to talk a little bit about our problem area. Jane.
Sure. Thank you, George. And next slide. So just to give you a sense, it's hot in Miami-Dade County. We finally got to the end of our heat season on October 31st, meaning we have half the year where we have close to half of the year where we have a heat index at or above 90 degrees average, but we're moving forward with many more days with a very dangerous heat index of 105 or more. Historic average is 7 days. Actually, this last summer, we had over 60 days. So we're getting very close to our mid-century target of close to 3 months of the year where we're hitting that very uncomfortable levels of heat. This is these increases are projections due to climate change. But next slide. Cities are getting hotter not only because of climate change, but how we develop as cities. So less tree canopy and vegetative material overall, more asphalt, impervious surfaces, more waste heat from buildings and vehicles. All of that contribute to making our cities globally up to 10 degrees hotter in certain areas than others. And we are not developing equally those urban heat islands. In fact, if you look on the far left box, that the white boxes are our lowest area median income. In the middle, the white boxes are our lowest tree canopy, which is our best indicator of where we have the highest urban heat islands. And then we did a heat vulnerability study where we actually took the data of where people live that are ending up in the emergency room or being hospitalized for heat-related illnesses. And the darkest red areas are the areas that have the highest rates of both emergency department visits and hospitalizations related to heat-related illnesses. And those areas are up to 4 times, sometimes even 5 times more likely to have a heat-related illness than others. And the top correlating factors for that are low income and high land surface temperatures. In other words, our urban heat islands. So we've had stories of people walking to a bus stop and waiting at a bus stop so long that they either had to make the difficult choice of paying more to protect their elderly mother and get a shared ride, or the bus driver telling us that he's had to call 911 and get people to an emergency department because our bus stops are not only not thermally comfortable, they're not thermally safe. And so the problem that we're focused on in this is to address that. We want to encourage public transit. We want people to walk, bike, and take the bus, but we've got to make it so that all year round they can do so, and particularly our most vulnerable who rely on our bus system to get to and from work. We also want them to show up at work without heat stress and show back up at home with their families without heat stress. So with that's the challenge. We wanted data to inform how we inform our design guidelines with the Department of Transit and Public Works, and to actually identify how we need to prioritize where our tree planting is going to happen in the right of way. We luckily, from our federal government, just got a $10 million grant to plant trees, street trees. So we will be putting this data into action. That's the goal. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Jane, so much. For starters, really great news on the $10 million in tree funding. Really excited to hear that things are happening on that front. And as we've touched on already, Miami's very hot, and in the face of the climate crisis, things are only slated to get hotter. Obviously, the county can't control the climate, can't control the weather. Advocates of geoengineering and conspiracy theorists might disagree, but we've got a real problem that we need to address, and the real question that we wanted to solve was that given our current knowledge gaps, how might we improve our data intake and sharing processes so that we're better able to triage and deploy heat mitigation treatments at bus stops. Next slide, please. And so in testing that hypothesis, we wanted to get a better understanding the best way we knew how, which is really to just ask the riders themselves. So we put out a survey, both online and in person. As you can see, we collected a very robust sample of responses from folks throughout the county. 329 that were then filtered, cleaned up, and parsed at 235. And the findings that we found were that over half of the respondents were feeling the heat. They were living in areas that are disproportionately impacted by extreme heat, areas that lack trees and generally have higher rates of heat island effects. And the vast majority of them are frequent transit riders, many of whom have or may have had some sort of experience with heat stress or heat related illness. And of course, that's very hard to quantify unless we're having these conversations, because unless oftentimes when someone is hospitalized, the tendency is for heat stress or heat related illness to go underreported because it gets flagged as something else. And then, of course, we asked commuters about the types of treatments and solutions that they would want to see at bus stops. And oftentimes what we heard were things like bus shelters, water stations, increases in bus frequency, and my personal favorite, which is planting more trees. Next slide, please. And really the importance of the user experience research, I really believe that it helped ground us in the work that was being done. More than anything, we were able to see the nuances of the problem and really our approach in the past and moving forward, what our approach should be to solving people's problems around heat. But also, just as importantly, I going out and talking to the riders allowed us to see the riders themselves, to hear their stories, and to reassess accordingly. And what we saw there were some emerging themes, things like discomfort that many riders were experiencing, physical and emotional stress, and of course, losses in productivity, particularly among outdoor workers, which needless to say, about 1 in 4 workers in Miami-Dade County are outdoor workers. So that's important to know. And really what happened was there was a subtle shift in our way of thinking about the problem, the initial problem statement, which, holding that premise of prioritizing scarce resources in mind, to simply ask then, how can we do a better job of improving people's safety and quality of experience when riding transit on a hot day? And with that, I'll pass it over to Pragya.
Thanks, Nick. If we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. The user research and the existing data that we have led us to focusing on a product with 2 specific stakeholders in mind. Number 1, commuters. We know commuters are in transit, they have inflexible schedules, and they're managing discomfort in the heat. The solutions we need to think of have to be low effort, easy to access, mobile friendly. On the other hand, we know the county has a ton of data on heat-related information across a few dimensions, but we do have an information gap on citizens' experience at the point of transit stops. The solutions we need to think of here have to bridge that information gap while also integrating with existing data sources so that we can use the collective data to inform our decisions. The product that we've come up with is to provide commuters with a tool to log amenities in their commute, with focus on access, availability, and usability of the amenities in their transit stops. And then provide the county with daily commuter-generated data on gaps in heat-related public services so that the county has richer data to make decisions on how to manage their resources. That brings us to the product, Cool Commute. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Pragya. I'm going to show you a demo of our product. Let's say I'm a commuter in Miami-Dade It's an extremely hot day, but I cannot reschedule my work commute or avoid taking a metro bus. My bus stop doesn't have any shade, so I have a hard time waiting for the bus in the direct sun. A message at the bus stop catches my eye. Sorry, can you stop the video play? No, yeah, thank you. A message at the bus stop catches my eye, indicating that the county is actively enhancing the city's resilience to heat and is seeking input from commuters. I quickly scan the QR code and discovers the cool commute website. Let's play the video. The website says I need to find the bus stop number first. I check the bus stop number, which is shown in the picture. Then I type the bus stop number into the search box. I see my bus stop number with the intersection name and click it. The website shows me the bus stop details page. There is a quick form that asks me how I wanted them to improve the bus stop. I check the boxes for more shade and access to drinking water, and then I submit my feedback. It seems that my voice is heard and county is trying to address the issue. I can also submit feedback for other bus stops that I use. Next, I'm going to hand it over to George to go through the next steps.
Thanks, Sakura. Next slide, please. So what are our next steps and roadmap? First and foremost, we're going to complete the prototype. Really super important, I think. So we're going to work with our friends at Google to complete the prototype in the coming weeks and months and transfer it over to our systems. Second is we're going to work together with Jane and her team and other county teams to support them in a rollout strategy and a product roadmap. So how are we going to roll this out in the community? What is the best way to do it? But also, looking at that backlog of features and seeing where we want to take this product, both as an immediate resource to extreme heat efforts, but also as a model for how we could apply this type of tool to other different challenge areas and mayoral priorities in Miami-Dade County. And then lastly, sustainability, right? Touching on that point of building community around our government services. As part of our sustainability tool or approach, we're going to reach out to other municipalities, our local academic partners, and community organizations that could potentially contribute to this tool, promote to this tool, and really make it a community-fueled solution. And I think that takes us to the end, and I'm happy to, I think we are happy to answer any questions.
Amazing job, Team Miami. You can see all the reactions here. Heat is something that we're just going to have to be grappling with, right? More and more as these days go on. So I think this is really fabulous. And the spirit of it for me is really that creating that total loop, right, of feedback between your residents, people experiencing this day to day, coming back to all of y'all. Curious how you've talked about, moving that spirit internally, right? Like what happens with these pieces of feedback as you get them, and how are you thinking about how you create more kind of support and alignment behind these tools? I think that's a really important sustainability element that a lot of our other teams are thinking about too.
Absolutely. Jane, I don't know if you want to give us some insight as to how you can apply some of this tool and data to your work.
Yeah. So our Department of Transportation and Public Works has already indicated they could really use this data to update their design guidelines just for all new improvements going forward, but also because we have this increased infusion of funding to date, our street tree plantings have been equally distributed amongst commission districts and really in response to commission requests, and this will give us another set of data to prioritize our street tree planting efforts, and that's more responsive, hopefully, to directly to users in the system. So that those are the two main areas that we're looking forward to using this data with, and it just also gives that our mayor has put a big priority not only on environment and equity, but engagement. And this really helps us meet those goals.
Thank you. I think there's a couple of questions in the Q&A if y'all want to pop in and answer them on chat. I think one interesting question here came in around community outreach efforts. Is there anything y'all are thinking about to kind of oh, I already see Nick is typing a response to that. Nick, do you want to jump in potentially?
Yeah, actually, that's really cool. I didn't know to let you see that. But yeah, as far as the community outreach aspect of this, we've thought very extensively about the go-to-market strategy, and one of the most important components of people actually using this tool is for them to know about it. And so we are planning on working very extensively with our partners at the county, but also our community partners and us internally at Transit Alliance, and capitalizing on our previous outreach efforts to try and promote this tool as best we can, so that folks are, it's on their radar, and they feel, a desire to want to use it, and they know what it's for ultimately. So yeah, just to touch on that, and we'll be building more on that too in terms of other press engagements. These are conversations that are still happening in terms of the sustainability, but definitely thinking through promoting this tool as much as possible.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. And just a huge shout out to Transit Alliance and generally our community partners. I think that is why the partnership you get to build through this program and hopefully carry on forward really is so important, because you will be our kind of guideposts and leaders there of how best to have this tool really serve your residents. So thank you, Team Miami. That was amazing. Huge round of applause. And I am going to transition us over to our next team, which is Macon-Bibb. So Macon-Bibb efforts have been dedicated to making the permitting process not only more efficient, but more user-friendly for both applicants and the county's internal staff. I'm really excited to be joined by today's presenters. We have Aaron Keller, who's the Chief of Staff and Vice President of Development at Newtown Macon, Jeff Ruggieri, the Director of Macon-Bibb's Planning and Zoning Department, and Kai Fan, who's a web programmer and lead tech for Macon-Bibb County. Kai's technical expertise has been instrumental in driving this project forward, and Newtown Macon has served as the team's community partner as an invaluable resource, bringing a wealth of local business connections to the team. Macon-Bibb was definitely our smallest team, but their energy and achievements have been nothing short of impressive. I'm really excited to hear what you guys have been working on. So without further ado, over to y'all.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next slide, please. So just to give you, next slide, please. Just to give you a little context of Macon-Bibb County, we are the state's 4th largest city as a nonpartisan consolidated government as of 2014. While consolidation was the right long-term decision, short-term, we've endured lingering issues affecting critical community process, particularly, as Rebecca mentioned, our business license and building permits. It is especially important to note a majority of all the steps in this process have to obtain license or permit through multiple local state authorities that are not under the county's purview. Next slide, please. Having multiple involved agencies who are not accountable to one another has created countless points of tension for our business and developer community. Despite these known frustration, as you can see on the page, Macon boasts a strong entrepreneurial spirit and a robust amount of local entertainment venues, restaurants, and retails that are very much concentrated in our historic downtown. Now, as a state, Georgia is a leading place to do business, but currently, I think the faces on this screen would not say that the same thing about Macon right now. Next slide, please. As you would imagine, herein lies our problem, which has been an Achilles heel for our county for decades, which actually pre-consolidates, which this problem predates consolidation. Currently, there are 7 different agencies that are involved in our permitting and licensing process. And I'll use that in air quotes right now. Next slide, please. And a quick story, because who doesn't love a good story? We have business owner A, who was relocating his business into a historic rehabilitation project that he'd invested in. Unlike most, this owner is willing and does read the code to determine answers, and yet he still had massive hiccups. Point in case, he received conflicting information about next steps throughout the process from different agencies, and most unfortunately received approval in an earlier stage of the process to only be denied at the end of his process by a different team member within that same organization that he had been approved earlier. This resulted in unexpected additional money to fix the issue that actually had already been approved prior to. Next slide. So in order to get a more profound as well as recorded understanding of the points of tension that we are aware of, we conducted interviews on the community side as well as the internal side. These people that interviewed on the community side are ones that had both opened a business as well as had developed a space. And I'll leave you with 2 quotes before I toss it over to my colleague, Chip PNC. 2 direct quotes. Not sure if I knew what I knew, but what I know now, I don't think I would have done the project. If you don't know the right people to call on when the process goes awry, what's the point? Jeff?
Thank you, Erin. What a warrior you are.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Jeff Ruggieri. I am the Executive Director of the Macon-Bibb Planning and Zoning Commission, and I was the PM for the project. If we can go back one more, please. Thank you. We conducted 5 interviews with county departments. As Erin said earlier, we are a little different than most places in that we have 3 autonomous government agencies that are reviewing one building or one business permit. So we have the P&Z, which handles all land use decisions. We have the county, which handles, engineering and traffic and things like that associated with development. And then we have the Macon Water Authority, which handles utilities and stormwater. None of those 3 are accountable to each other, except in the process itself. So that has really created or really made the problem that we were experiencing a lot more difficult to really tackle. A lot of the things that when we interviewed these other internal departments, we found that each department knew what they were doing, but they didn't know where they fit in the overall process of permitting. And they didn't know what other departments really did. So they could really just handle their own little silo and then push people along into the world and, and say good luck. And I think some of those quotes from Erin that she said earlier really exemplify really how that manifests itself in our process. And another issue that we found was internally, if an applicant called an individual department, they really couldn't tell you unless they knew who to call, where their project was in the permitting process. And again, that just led to a lot of confusion, lack of transparency, and really extending the time frame needlessly for approving projects. Next slide, please. So our solution was twofold, really, to create that central portal and to create a process map, visually depicting what a permit goes through in order to come to completion. So we created a central portal for our applicants. We have an existing Camino software that we're using here in planning and zoning. And I'll step back a little bit and say that one of the other issues that we saw internally here was that some departments were all electronic. Some departments were a hybrid between electronic and paper. Some were all paper, none of which used the same programs through the permitting process. So we had every issue that you could imagine when you're trying to streamline a permitting process. So Camino software is a really good software. We use it here. It easily moves people through the steps of development. It's very transparent in that applicants can see where they're at. And other reviewing agencies can also see where they're at also in the process. And again, we can upload all the information we need inside the application itself to make that available in real time to the applicants or other reviewing agencies also. The second part, we created the process map and a landing page. It graphically outlines, you know, what the process looks like to get a permit. We can easily point people to where they're at or where they need to input the process, because you can input in a few different ways depending on your project. And just seeing it visually was something, I guess, that was never done before here in Macon-Bibb, and people are really excited just to see it on a piece of paper for once. And with that inside, again, people can check the application, the status across all the reviewing departments. And we've also added a frequently asked questions page and links to other reviewing agencies in one centralized place where they can see the process, contact who they need to contact, and get that info and get any easy questions answered. Next slide, we'll talk about our demo a little bit, and Kai Fan will handle that for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. This is Kai from Macon-Bibb IT department. I will just show you guys what the demo we have worked on. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this is what the business development service website looked like before, lacking crucial information used for a resource for the licensing and permitting process. The general public often doesn't know where to begin or what steps to follow. Next slide, please. In response to the issue we discussed, we have developed a very user-friendly website featuring a very clear process map, guiding citizens through the entire process. Next slide, please. In addition to the website enhancements, we also offer a very comprehensive overview for each key step, including essential information about relevant agency, such as their website, phone number, contact information. And furthermore, we also incorporate an FAQ section to address common concerns from the public. Next slide, please. So besides of the website, we also try to centralize our application portal to enhance internal communication and transparency in our application status. So Camino, we are seeing right now is the 1 hour online permit system for Planning and Zoning Commission. So we have introduced a very specific component with the Camino to streamline the communication between the Planning and Zoning Commission and other agency. So facilitating the approval process. For example, after reviewing the submission, of Planning and Zoning Commission staff can ask for approval from the Macon Water Authority by simply clicking the tab. Next slide, please. So on the tab page, personnel from the Plan Zoning Department can have the ability to assign this task to the employee from the Water Authority. Additionally, they also can just conveniently upload the decision letter by simply dragging and dropping into the onto the page. Next slide, please. After this task is signed, an email containing the task detail will be sent to the Water Authority. Staff member from the Water Authority can easily just access the task by clicking the View Task button for the further actions. Next slide, please. So once Water Authority agent efficiently make the decision by clicking, checking either yes or no button and upload their approval letter as needed, and their approval information will be recorded. Next slide, please. As you can see, the agency information and time, the data time has been accurately recorded for the reference. And next slide, please. When a decision is made, a system will automatically mark this task as finished with a green check icon in front of the agency's name, ensuring a clear process tracking. And now the department approval process being finished, and then the staff from plans only can continue to move the staff to another status. I will pass to Jeff the next step. Thank you.
Next slide. Thanks, Kai. So our next steps, this is what we figured out that this is probably about 75% of the solution. We need to work on really becoming that one-stop shop for applicants. That was always the goal when we started this, but we couldn't quite get there. But I think, as Oliver said earlier in his keynote speech, which is just a great transition to our to our solution, I think, is that it is a foundation that we're going to build off of. So we really need to work more of other agencies' workflows into Camino just to provide that higher level of transparency and communication between applicant and reviewer. We obviously need to train external departments on how to use the Camino and what to expect when we have these projects coming through. And ultimately, we want to get to a page where any citizen, driving down the street and see some lane being cleared and says, what the heck's going on there? They'll be able to type in an address or a point of interest or something and see all the projects or that specific projects that's going on in their community. Next slide, please. So our lessons learned. I think one of the biggest things we learned is that the solution can be right under your nose. We started this with this grand idea of having a centralized, app or something which would pull all the pertinent information from other departments to allow applicants just in real time to see exactly what's going on and what they need to do next. But innovation only requires that you close the gap between expectations and results. And I think we figured out that we can use our own tools that we have available to us now, just take advantage of that entire functionality and really close that review time frame and provide the transparency to applicants when they're in the process, so they can get all their questions answered. They know exactly what they're doing and where to go next. So I think it was a tremendous success from that standpoint. And again, it's foundational. We're going to keep building off of it. Another thing we realized was, and this will really address that, was that our simple projects, we could move right through the whole entire permitting process from application to business licensing, and it was really smooth. But when we had larger, more complex projects, they were starting and stopping and starting and stopping and starting and stopping many times, sometimes over a 2-year period, because people just had to get together and get questions answered. And we bring all the department heads together and everybody would make a decision and we'd go off, and then a month later we'd be back with another issue. This solution here closes that time frame, shrinks that down, provides a lot more information available at the fingertips of applicants and reviewers, so we can communicate a lot more effectively, a lot more efficiently over time. And most importantly, as one of our team members, Kai, said when we were trying to answer this question, to make this slide, Kai said, well, now I know how to get a business license in Macon-Bibb County. And I think that's a win on any way you slice it. So I think that's it. Right, next slide. Yeah, thank you to the team. Excellent project, made some great friends. I think we did some great work for the community. And Erin, wow, you powered right through that, huh? She's a warrior. Thank you, everybody. That's it. Any questions, we'll love to answer.
Gosh, thank you, Team Macon-Bibb. And just this is going off in the chat, but Aaron, muscling through that lost voice, you are a true all-star. I have a couple questions here I'd love for y'all to answer. The first one is in our Q&A. So I'm seeing here, including approval from each agency, not only greatly improves in communication, but I think would reveal bottlenecks as shown by poor or slow processes or responses. Is there any thought around that that y'all want to share?
Well, I'm sure Kai can get right into the meat of that, but yeah, so we'll be able to monitor when we're communicating and how. So if we send out an approval to an external agency and they reply back, we'll know exactly when that happened, or if it didn't happen for that matter. Now it's just 100 phone calls. Planning and zoning is really the hub for all this. And again, since we're an autonomous organization, we're getting inundated with every question from where's my business license to, there's a dog in my backyard to take, someone needs to take care of that. So this process, we're hopefully kind of eliminating some of that external stuff because we can point people in the right direction. But again, we'll be able to measure. Measurables are a big thing, how we're doing and how quickly we're doing it, and see if there's any kinks in the system that we'll always keep working on. If that answers the question.
I think that's fabulous. I saw another in a chat I don't want to lose. Is this pulling from existing permitting systems or is the intent to replace them?
Well, we July 22, we switched over our permitting systems to Camino. So it's new to us. We still have legacy data that we're still trying to pull into the new system. There was a lot of formatting issues, as you can imagine, to do that. But we'll be able to build off of it. The great part about Camino, and I've led 3 organizations from going from paper to fully electronic, and I've made every mistake possible. But the great part about Camino is it's super customizable, and we can do it in-house. As you know, Kai did all that work that you see there. We didn't have to, get an IT ticket from our vendor to tell them for them to tell us they can't do it. So there's a million things you can do with workflows and incorporating other reviewing agencies into it. So we're hoping to build off of it to allow other agencies to get into Camino and tap into that functionality, so we can really provide that one-stop shop best we can.
Awesome. I think that brings us to the end of the time, but thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Kai. Yeah, it was such a pleasure. I actually got to go to Macon-Bibb this sprint, and seeing just this small mighty team work through these challenges has been really, really fulfilling. So great job, y'all. We are over to our next team of Detroit, Michigan. Okay, so the city of Detroit has focused on centralizing community engagement efforts and data pertaining to transportation and mobility. I'm pleased to introduce their speakers for today, Connor Petz, who's the Senior Mobility Strategist for the City of Detroit's Office of Mobility and Innovation. Connor's worked in public service since the beginning of career and has had the primary focus of planning for transportation solutions in and around the city of Detroit. He has a master's in urban planning and bachelor's of sustainability and natural resource management. I'm also pleased to welcome Arena Johnson, who's the Equitable Mobility Coordinator at the East Side Community Network. Through the TOPC project, she has led the community interviews to gather research and has collaborated with the City of Detroit and the entire TOPC Detroit team to represent community input. East Side Community Network is fabulous. They were brought in as a community partner because they have an extensive understanding of residents' needs and are beginning their own exploration into providing transportation and mobility resources for residents. And lastly, Anuradha Bajpayee is product manager at google.org for the Top Cities Detroit project. She's leading the development of the automation solution that you'll hear a little bit more about, which is powered by AI to process survey data and collaborate with the city team and other stakeholders. Really excited to hear from you all. Over to you, Detroit.
Thanks so much, Rebecca. I really appreciate the introduction. And without further ado, here we are. We've made it, so to speak. Can everyone hear me all right, first of all, on the panel? Yes or no? Thumbs up? Okay, cool.
Yes.
So for, I guess, like a quick introduction, again, thank you again, Rebecca, for speeding past those things. So I'm speaking as well as Arena and Anuradha, and we're gonna go through the solution that we are currently procuring and creating, and it's a really exciting solution that we hope that you all share excitement with. So next slide, please. So for today, quick agenda. We're going to go through the problem. So what exactly is our problem statement, research, so what we've done, and then our solution demo, which is just a few screenshots for time sensitivity, and then next steps. So what exactly is next, sustainability, things like that. So as Rebecca alluded to, transportation and mobility is a large issue in the city of Detroit. And the thing is, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And so we have a lot of different engagement and research studies that we have done throughout the city of Detroit, as well as in previous, I guess, like iterations of administrations. And so throughout that, what we've seen is there's all of these different resources that are out there, but it's very difficult to actually see them centralized. So what we see is a difficulty in decision-making when it comes to the city, and then reaching back out to the community on certain topics that have already been engaged upon. And then we also see either community advocates or residents maybe seeing some confusion around why we're reaching out again, as well as not quite understanding what may be planned in the future for their community. So with that, next slide, please. So with that, we've kind of created some personas or different users that we've thought of and that we've curated for our solution. First one being a city employee, where we're going to introduce Christian as a employee working at the city, working for our Office of Mobility Innovation. So we're going with that he worked at the city for 3 years so far, and he's looking to apply for a federal grant for electric charging infrastructure, let's say. So the application would ask for information, you know, maybe for it needs to connect with current plans in the existing master plan alignment and other suitable locations throughout the city, but he's not sure where he can find that data. So after the city employee, I'll hand it off to Arena for talking about the experiences of residents and mobility advocates.
Yeah, so next we have our resident persona, Angie, who has been a resident of the Corktown neighborhood here in Detroit for 20 years. She was recently surveyed about her neighborhood's connectivity and streetscape, along with pedestrian experience and much more in 2019. And now she wants to know what exactly the survey was used for and the current developments of mobility in her neighborhood. And then next we have our mobility advocate, Brian, who works on issues of access for greater transportation services in his neighborhood. And then residents as well are finding it difficult to get around the community. So he wants to start a project for the community micromobility hub, but needs data on what the city has done so far. And what current data there is on people's use of electric vehicles and e-bikes and e-scooters and things of like that nature. Next slide, please. So in regards to our research data for this project, we focused on conducting interviews between mobility advocates and city workers, which was helpful in gathering the concerns of accessing data, and this eventually led to the outcome of building out our dashboard. And so some key themes that were coming up as we were doing this interview process was just like people wanting visualization, which would help in understanding the data, and then also just needing easily digestible data and summaries for these projects. Next slide.
And to get a little bit more into our solution, thanks Arena for teeing us up to this. So a solution, it seems like it would be fairly simple, right? We have decentralized data in a bunch of different places, specifically in analog formats like PDF or just general reports where maybe the city doesn't necessarily have ownership, or there's just different owners to people who have the actual raw data. So we've come up with the solution of having the centralized publicly accessible dashboard where we can share those previous reports. And basically it's through a click and point model. It has some AI integration where there's an AI portal where you can put in the PDF report and it pulls out some field information. And then it'll give you a snapshot essentially of a summary of what that report is. And it'll give you a geographic location of where exactly that study was done. So going into the actual features of our solution. So the first one being, again, it's point and click. So think of it as an Esri kind of map dashboard where you can click on a particular location and then you'll be able to get a snapshot of a summary of the PDF report. Next slide, please. And we have a photo here, or a still shot of what exactly this is going to be like. So we have different geographic zones made by polygon shapes, and then it tells you a description, gives you a link to the report, and then a publication date, as well as the different topics that it pertains to, which in our case, it is going to be mainly focused on transportation and mobility to begin with, but then hopefully we will be expanding on it. Next slide, please. This next feature right here is basically a way to help with solving on finding the actual information that you want to find. Okay, so you can find in a particular area, you can point and click, but what if you're looking for something specific? So we added in a search and filter function so that you can find specific things or topics that you're looking for. Next slide, please. So right here, we have an example of, I've set the filter to a city council district. So I'm looking at District 4. And then I've also filtered, which you can't see here, to transportation and mobility. So we're looking at 2 reports in District 4, both pertaining to transportation and mobility. Next slide, please. And I will, sorry, go ahead, Anyada.
Thanks, Connor, and thanks, Arena. A great summary. So my name is Anuradha Bajpayee. I'm a product manager from Google.org. And so what we are working here is that that PDFs, are, as Connor mentioned, that the survey results are stored in PDF. And sometimes these PDFs are large, like 100+ pages. So we can understand that how difficult it might be to extract information for when we want to read that information from PDF. So what we are doing to resolve that issue is building an automation solution with AI. And this solution will be able to extract information from PDF, and we can find any key data that might be relevant for the city team as well as for residents. And we will be putting this information for the dashboard. So that is how we will be able to build the information out of the PDF and provide transparency, the information that has been collected as part of surveys. Next slide, please. So this is a screenshot of the automation solution that we are building. This will be for the city team and it will be internal. This solution will provide the capability to upload the PDF report, and it will extract information from the PDF report and will provide any key data information like summary of the report. So instead of reading a 150 pages report, we can see the summary instantly. And also any other key information that city team is looking for, this tool will be able to provide that information. And then we will pass it on to display it on the dashboard. So we are using artificial intelligence to extract this information from PDF. So this is where we are right now, and before I hand it over to Connor again to share how this is helping our community, I just wanted to take a moment to thank our city team, our community partners, CPI, Beeck, and our Google team members for the amazing work that has gone into building this solution. And thank you so much. So over to you, Connor.
Thank you, Anuradha. So moving in, so obviously we've gone over the solution. So how exactly does this help these scenarios, these personas that we've developed? Well, now instead of being confused on where you can find specific data, Christian, for example, the city employee, can go in, do a little search query and figure out in a particular geographic location, whether it's citywide, whether it's pointed, about what kind of information exactly he wants. So he can pull up certain summaries of data, like for example, emissions in this case, for that EV infrastructure that he's looking for. And it's supposed to be very, I guess, intuitive and help with decision-making at the city administrative level. And on to you, Arena, for the resident and mobility advocate.
Yeah, so going back to our resident persona, Angie, she can now easily access the data through this tool and hover over the visual map feature to find her neighborhood and locate the, for example, Greater Corktown Framework Plan that she participated in, and see the recommendations and the takeaways from the project. And then our mobility advocate, Brian, can also now use this tool through the search and filter feature to find specific information on e-bikes and the 2020 essential workers micromobility pilot that will help him better understand e-vehicles in his neighborhood and how it helps the community and its benefits. Next slide, please. Yeah, so next step. So what are we doing next? So this tool will also include additional fields of information over time as we continue to add to it, and for it to be multifunctional. And we will partner with the mobility advocates again and residents with our mobility work group through ECN to help inform these decisions regarding potential uses and the advancement of the mobility dashboard. And then lastly, it'll also be a creation of a central hub to store data as well. And next slide, please.
So in conclusion, just going to be very brief here. So obviously we have an overarching problem of decentralized data. So develop a tool that centralizes said data, and hopefully it'll lead to better awareness at the resident advocate level and also improve decision-making at the city level. And in a way, it would end up actually holding us more accountable as public servants. So with that, I'll leave you guys off. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And does anyone have any questions?
Wow, Detroit. Thank you guys so much. It was really exciting to work with all of you through this process, especially to see one of our first tools that's gonna make use of Gen AI. And I think that's excited a few folks in chat as well. So 2 questions. Such a great use of Gen AI to go through multiple reports and multiple pages, extracting those critical pieces of info. One question we had was, how many pages can the AI review? And do you see this being useful to other teams or other processes in the city?
So Anuradha, I'm gonna hand that one off to you for the more technical aspect of the AI portion.
Sure. So right now, the tool that we are using, it is not showing the limitation of number of pages. So what we understand is that it should be able to process 150 plus pages or 200 pages of report. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Anuradha. And then to that other piece of it, oh wow, 5,000 pages per month. That's a lot. The other question was around how you could see other parts of your city. And I've even see some questions around, are there ways to upload reports that did not get authored by the city, like by CBOs or academic? Yeah, just really thinking about how else we can kind of leverage this amazing tech.
So yes, definitely is the answer. We don't want to just include city-based reports. The goal here is to really get a more holistic understanding of what exactly has been done. We want to have a little bit more collaboration when it comes to, I guess, like community engagement, seeing as the city does so much engagement around certain topics, and if we're not communicating that with community orgs or even SEMCOG specifically, like how you've mentioned, Aaron, we want to make sure to include the other government organizations that have done studies, as well as like community orgs in the area, to really get that, I guess, rounded view of problems and things that we can solve.
Amazing. And then one last cue, I wonder, Irina, if you can speak to this. So we love the user personas. I think that's a great way to tell the story. Folks had a little more, wanted to know a little bit more about how those were created in the process of doing the interviews, if you wanted to share there.
Yeah, so some of the personas were just like inspired by some of the interviews, so they're not as specific as some of the interviews we conducted. But for example, we conducted an interview with a mobility advocate that is looking to build out a micromobility hub. So like we included that in our personas, and then also coming from the list of projects and plans that we plan to include in the dashboard. That's also where we got some of the specific plans and included those just to bring it more to life and relatable.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much. That was fabulous. Another round of applause or Zoom emotion reactions for this finally brings us to our very last presentation of the day from the fabulous team in Akron, Ohio. So in partnership with their community partner, United Way Summit Medina County, and Google.org, the team used their time in the sprint to envision a tool that makes housing information and resources easily accessible for residents. Presenting for Akron, we have Jody Forrester and Matt Wilsbacher from the city's Housing Compliance Division, Tammy Tucker, who's the city's Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Joe Scalise, Director of Housing and Services at United Way Summit Medina, and Sakura Umebayashi, the team's UXC from Google.org. Quick shout out, this is Akron's first time participating in TOPC, and we were just really blown away by the team's dedication to addressing their problem area their commitment to centering resident and community voices throughout the project, and their really collaborative team dynamic. So we're so excited to hear from y'all. Over to you.
Hello, I'm Jody Forrester with the City of Akron Housing Compliance Division. First off, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. I'd like to give a shout out to all my fellow City of Akron employees who worked on the project, as well as our community partners at the United Way, the help of CPI and the Beeck Center, our wonderful tech partners at Google, and of course, the Knight Foundation. Next slide. One more. Thank you. Finding safe and affordable housing is a significant issue in Akron. That's why housing was chosen for our Top City project. We wanted to simplify the process of finding safe, livable, and affordable housing by providing residents with resources to help them feel informed and supported in their housing decision-making. Additionally, we wanted to provide resources that would inform tenants of their rights and responsibilities, as well as the responsibilities of the owners they enter into agreements with. Much of the housing in Akron was built in the early 1900s. Much of this older housing stock is in need of repairs and updates. Like many other municipalities, the older housing stock is being purchased by out-of-state entities, many sight unseen. The city's current system of code enforcement is a complaint-based system. We receive approximately 1,500 new complaints each year. The city does not have a rental licensing requirement. Having a requirement would require all the rental units to be inspected annually, but because we do not have that, we work on a complaint basis. Next slide. This slide shows a map of Akron's 10 wards. The map on the left depicts poverty rate, with the darker areas representing higher levels of poverty. The map on the right depicts rent burden, again with the darker areas showing the percentage of renters that are spending more than 30% of their income on rent. The wards with darker colors in both metrics, wards 2, 3, 5, and 9, comprise approximately 50% of the Housing Code Compliance Division's caseload. Akron had the 24th highest rate of evictions based on 2016 data. Nearly 6 in every 100 households were evicted during the time studied. In 2021, there were 2,386 evictions filed in Akron. Evictions, short decision timeframes, and the appearance of a lack of options funnel renters towards substandard housing since they feel that's all they're able to get. And now I'd like to pass it on to Joe.
Go ahead and flip the slide, please. Hi, I'm Joe Scalise. I work for United Way of Summit Medina, and I serve the role as community planner on this project. TOPC Akron set out to build our research strategy centered on incorporating input from low to mid-income renters who frequently move due to eviction or other housing issues. The demographic data on evictions in Akron reveals that African-American, single, female heads of households are disproportionately affected by evictions. Based on that information, the project focused on identifying participant experts who could offer insight from that similar or exact experience. Moreover, these households are primarily located in the areas of the city where housing violations occur the most. Our initial research was conducted in 3 hour-long sessions with 5 participant experts. Additionally, our research team did focus groups with agencies constantly linked to housing issues and general conditions of the local housing market. We consulted with representatives from Fair Housing, Legal Aid, the Akron Metropolitan Housing Authority, as they participated in research interviews to offer insights. During this process, it was revealed that this product must be readily accessible to those with limited technical capacity. And it's got to communicate to people and consumers in a universally common language. Next slide, please. If you could just take a moment to digest some of that feedback that we got in this tenant experience, showing the difficulty of locating housing, knowing about the housing they were living in, and then starting the process all over again. A lot of our group interviewees were asked to share their experiences with housing conditions, evictions, and housing location. Our local experts were asked to share their knowledge of existing support systems and what they feel people should know about their individual areas. All these groups were shown examples of websites from other cities and were asked what did they like, what was useful, and what other features they might want to see from this project. Go ahead with the next slide. After conducting these initial interviews, we had some regularly cited themes. That this housing location process in our community is extremely competitive and time sensitive, and it creates pressures on residents to act quickly without time to really research where they might be going. Our tools needed to provide quick access to relevant information. Our residents and experts also told us that information on property owners is just as important as that information on the location. Many of our residents felt they could make decisions on who was a good landlord versus a bad landlord by viewing the scope of all those properties owned and getting the information about all those properties to one specific owner. And then lastly, they felt the need for information for tenant rights and procedures. Often in dealing with their own substandard housing conditions, they didn't have the information or didn't understand a way that they could start to file a complaint or what solutions might be available to their problem. And so we wanted to make sure that that was present in the tool and accessible. So I'm going to throw it over to Matt Wilsbacher from the city of Akron to tell you a little bit about the product.
Hi, Matt Wilsbacher, City of Akron's Housing Division or Housing Compliance Division. Hi. So team members met in person and remotely for a 2-day development session to kind of go over the findings of the research and the interviews to finalize all the project goals, and did a lot of brainstorming, generated a number of approaches that were narrowed and voted on. The winning approach being to hone in on making public records about housing complaints more readily available. The idea that if people can see these complaints, they can make better informed decisions about potential housing. And it was also hoped that we would have a secondary effect, that this would act as kind of a market incentive for landlords to be more proactive about doing repairs and maintenance to their properties to keep them in a better state of condition before complaints are made. So we settled on a mobile friendly website. We figured that would be best suited for accessibility for and ease of use for the widest range of residents of Akron. And it was also decided that that would be easier to maintain and update in the long term versus some sort of app-based system. And a big hurdle that we had in all of this was the data itself. Housing Compliance Division's internal database is a nearly 25-year-old Microsoft Access file. And obviously this had to be updated to something more modern. So it was brought up to the Microsoft SQL servers that are used by the rest of the city's systems. Next slide, please. So 5 new participant experts were brought in for user testing for the Figma prototype that was generated. And so they were given about half an hour to an hour to just kind of play with it, work with it. We got feedback on so much from improving the interface and decluttering what information was useful and what wasn't about properties and the owners, and even little things like the size of the back button that was there. The primary takeaway from all of the user testing volunteers was that they considered it a useful source of information. And when that was all said and done, we were kind of pleased with, frankly, how something that we have that would be really good for the city of Akron and for its residents going forward. But I will toss it over to Sakura for a little product demo.
Hi everyone, I'm Sakura, a pro bono designer from google.org. Today I'm excited to show you a demo of a new website we've been working on. This website is a one-stop shop for tenants to find information about properties and get help with any violations they may have. Let's say I'm a tenant looking for an apartment to rent. I can come to this website and type in the address to see the owner's information and violation history. So click the search bar and and one more. As you can see, this page shows me the owner's name, contact information, and the number and type of violation the apartment building has. It also shows me how long it took the owner to resolve each violation. Many usability test participants mentioned that they had trouble finding the owner's contact information. So we added a phone number and email address so that they can contact the owners first. Click the owner name ABC Management. I can also see a list of the owner's other properties and their violation history. This can be helpful if I'm concerned that the owner is a repeated offender. And click the logo on the top. This website also provides resources to help tenants resolve violations. For example, there is a section on the website with information on how to file a complaint with the city. Yeah, this is just a prototype of the website, but our development team is working hard to make it reality. Tammy will now go over our next steps.
Hello, my name is Tammy Tucker. I serve as the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the City of Akron. And our next steps include the final product development will be completed during the offboarding period with a go live date in January of 2024. The launch of the website will coincide with complete update of our local housing search website. And it's gonna, that website is called summithousingsearch.org. Both sites will feature prominent links to each other, so residents can utilize them in unison when searching for rental properties. Also in January 2024, it is the month of our annual homeless point in time count. So we plan on holding our live launch event during a period when homelessness and housing instability will be topics in our local current events. In addition, throughout the sprint process, our TOPC group was impacted by the authentic input given by our community participant experts. Their excitement and enthusiasm while offering their vital voices brought inspiration to all of the collaborators. Additionally, each collaborator offered new insights and strengths that introduced cross-sector concepts that could be adapted by all partners in future products. The Akron TOPC team is thankful for this opportunity, and we hope that our sincere efforts and project ownership will result in meaningful resources for those most in need of this information, and that it becomes an effective tool for self-guidance in the local rental market here in Akron, Ohio. That concludes our lessons learned, and thank you for your time and attention. We will entertain all questions at this time.
Amazing job, Team Akron. I love this tool. I love the way you've told your story, how it continues to center that resident feedback, adapt that resident feedback, really just integrate into the ways you guys worked. And a question I had personally was, what are your thoughts on continuing to add that resident voice and input into the development of the tool or any other initiatives you might be thinking of?
Well, I don't mind jumping in on this one, team, if you guys don't mind. I think that one of the advantages we have here in Akron, especially here at United, is we're involved with a lot of community projects related to housing. So both in the course of our work and in the course of engaging with our partners, there's no shortage of the ability to identify people that are willing to give us time, test our product, and give us feedback. And this includes being able to take that out to a group that we have in our local continuum of care that comprised of people with lived experience of homelessness or housing instability. So again, we feel that there's lots of ways to target people in different situations. And in the spirit of the product we developed, we intend on continually incorporating the voice of the user as we make sure it's functional for our city.
I'd like to add on that, as Akron continues to work on equity projects in the future, as one of our teams already said, that we can't have a solution for us without us. So that particular design will continue to go on to all other equity products, projects in the city of Akron.
I think that is Excellent. Perfect way to sum that up, Tammy. And thank you, Joe, as well. There are a lot of questions coming in for Akron in the Q&A. I think you all have the ability to jump in there and respond to a couple of those by typing, if you wouldn't mind. I just want to give another huge round of applause and congratulations to our team in Akron, as well as all of our wonderful Top Cities teams. This has just been such a pleasure. I know how much hard work it took to get to this point, and we're so excited to see these products coming to life and see y'all roll these out in your communities. If you are interested in any of the products on the line, there's contact information here on the screen. We can also share this with you after the fact. Please get in touch. Our project managers in each location have graciously offered to be available to all of y'all if you want to learn more. And we are all for scaling and building from lessons learned and technologies being used. So please feel free to do that. All right, to close out today's event, it's now my pleasure to welcome Kelly Jin, who is the Vice President for Community and National Initiatives at the Knight Foundation. I think y'all have heard me call Knight our partner on this event, and there really isn't a better word to describe how Knight approaches this program and how they think about investing in their 26 communities. Knight's goal is to develop engaged, inclusive, and equitable communities, and they're consistently led by lived experience and local expertise. Our speaker for today, Kelly Jin, has literally walked the walk on this. She's been an invaluable champion and thought partner to the program practically since its inception. And she's just as likely to be seen walking the streets of Macon-Bibb to get a firsthand view of the downtown revitalization efforts as she is to be seen speaking nationally on using data and technology responsibly to improve governments and organizations. She's previously served as the Chief Analytics Officer for the City of New York and Director of the Mayor's Office of Data and Analytics, and advised the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. We're really lucky to have you, Kelly, and we're so glad you could join us. Over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Rebecca. And it's really good to see at least some segment of you on the screen and folks across the country. I have, of course, my prepared remarks, but I will make a funny comment, which is as we were going through. So this is how committed I am to Knight Foundation and Knight Cities, because I care about all of them. I have my weather app, since we were talking about weather apps. I always generally know what temperature it is since we're based in Miami. Just I got to double check each time to see how cold it is since it's already November and still in the 80s here in Florida, in South Florida. But anywho, thank you guys. And really just thanks for the incredible good work that you put in today, but also this year and with this particular cohort. As you've already heard, this project spanned 4 different Knight cities. We've got 26 Knight cities, and these are the places where the Knight brothers owned and operated their newspaper businesses from, and where we still continue to invest in today. We are really committed, as Rebecca mentioned, to supporting more informed, engaged, and equitable communities. And today we do roughly about $100+ million in grant making a year, or about a $2.5 billion national foundation. And we continue to just really believe that solutions, ideas, better community outcomes are always going to come about better from the local level and kind of from all of the incredible work that you guys are doing on the ground. Roughly about 2 years ago, we committed over $3 million for this project, this collaboration across the Beeck Center, Center for Public Impact, as well as Google.org. And so also just a big thank you to our partners. We know that it really both kind of like takes a village within each of your cities, but then it also takes like a bigger village across all of the local partners to get this work done. We really saw the potential, and I think I also saw the potential to help improve very specifically on how do you move the needle on community outcomes and how can you use design, data, and technology to do that. And so every time I kind of hear updates and bug Rebecca with like, have they thought about all these other things? Because I used to be in those seats and in folks' shoes. We know that this work is really hard and complex, and sometimes you need some inspiration capital. Sometimes you need technical support. Sometimes you just need like people to talk to. And I've always felt from the beginning that this project is kind of a blend of all of those things, in recognition of the hard work that both public servants are doing on the ground, but also leaders of community groups and nonprofits locally as well. And so that's super important. As you guys continue to carry on and figure out the sustainability pathways for each of these projects, the quote that I wanted to share is from former Philadelphia Mayor Nutter, who I think he was up on stage once, and this quote always has stuck with me. He said, "Make it so good that they'll never take it away." And he was referencing the deployment of 311 in Philadelphia. And somebody was asking him about administration transitions and like, how do you do stuff that, you know, won't kind of fade out at some point? And that's always stuck with me, because I think the quality of how you engage and deliver for communities and for residents is a huge, huge part of trust building and trust keeping between institutions and the public. And many of you are at the forefronts of that, and just a kind of huge acknowledgement that technology can help make those jobs and make those services and products that much better for residents in their day-to-day. And so definitely wanted to make sure to highlight that. And then maybe the note I'll close on here is having spent a lot of time on technology services and products and tools. And I got the great privilege of working alongside Lynn Overman here, who was the speaker earlier. And, you know, I think she and I both just spent so much time on technologies and tools. And at the end of the day, it's actually, and I think you guys know this intrinsically, it's not actually about the website or about the toolkit or about the process or some acronym that nobody understands except for in your community or your agency, but it's actually about how does that work improve people's lives at the end of the day. Nationally, it's always about, you know, the refrain of the American people. For all of you, it matters how are you improving people's lives day in and day out. That's what kind of guided me and why I entered into government service and state and public service. And these days, I'm really privileged to be able to continue that kind of mission, but from a philanthropy remit. And so just to close, I want to say a huge thank you again to everybody on this call and the great work. If you need a boost at some point, we'll send around my email so I can give you guys a boost. You know, I can cheer you guys on across all of these cities as you continue. Huge thank you to google.org, Beeck Center, and Center for Public Impact. And maybe the last note I will close on is that our wonderful program officer, Bernardo, is actually wrapping up his time at Knight Foundation. Many of you have got hopefully a chance to engage with him over the last two plus years. He is off to his next adventure and will be wrapping things up at Knight Foundation in the next 2 weeks or so here. So also just a huge thank you to everything that Bernardo has done to shepherd this project forward. And a huge thanks to all of you. It's been a pleasure to join you and hear about all of the great work here for Demo Day. And with that, Rebecca, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And huge shout out to Bernardo. He has been just an incredible partner through all of this, to use my favorite word again, but we're going to miss him terribly. Really excited for his next adventure. That brings us to the end of Demo Day. This is such a pleasure to be with all of you. Thank you to all of our partners, Knight, google.org, Beeck, all of our cities, counties, and community partners. We will follow up with some resources from today so you can keep in touch and learn more about the different prototypes that'll be rolling out in communities and more about what we're doing here at TOPC. But for now, let me say enjoy the rest of your day and we look forward to catching up with y'all in the future. Thanks so much.